بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم لا حول ولا قوة الا بالله العلی العظیم الحمد لله رب العالمین و صلی الله علی سیدنا و نبینا ابی القاسم المصطفى محمد و آله الطیبین الطاهرین لا سیما بقیة الله فی الارضین عجل الله تعالی فرجه الشریف. اللهم اخرجنی من ظلمات الوهم و اکرمنی بنور الفهم. اللهم افتح علينا ابواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا ارحم الراحمين. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to continue our study of Sharh al-Manzumah by Ayatummah Mutahhari. After the discussion about huduth wa qidam, he moves on to the seventh section of Manzumah, Faride Sabi'ah, to the seventh one, which is about cause and effect, illa wa ma'lul. The first Ghurar, the first part in this section, is about definition of illa and different classifications of illa. So Ayatollah Mutahhari says that most of the things here are about definitions, different types of illa and ma'lul, and the rules that they apply to these, although discussion is mostly about illa. And sometimes these rules and these properties which are mentioned are for all types of illa, and some of them are only, for example, for one type, like for al-Fa'ili or al-Suri, for example. Some of the discussions are more about ilahiyat bil ma'na al-akhas, so they are more about wajib al-wujud. Some are about nafs. So there are different discussions here, and he says, but the main thing that we want to pursue, Ayatollah Mutahhari, says that the main purpose that we have after definitions and classifications is illat gha'i, the reason for doing something or for creating something. And he says this is very important discussion, and this is an area that philosophers who are believers and materialistic approach, they differ on this issue. So materialist philosophers or atheist philosophers and theist philosophers, they have lots of differences when it comes to illat gha'i. So I think was in this class or another class that I mentioned that Ayatollah Jawadi Amuli says that everything is like a triangle. What it is, what it's illat fa'ili and what it's illat gha'i. Unfortunately, in modern thinking, especially in science, etc., they don't talk that much about illat fa'ili and illat gha'i. Just they focus on the thing. Why rain is coming? They try to explain just by looking at the surface. They don't go higher to reach fa'il, and they don't talk about ghaya, why fa'il has done this. So Ayatollah Mutahhari says after knowing the definitions and types, we talk more about illat gha'i. Now let's start with definitions. Haji Sabzewari rahmatullah alayh says, إن الذي الشيء إليه افتقرا فعلة والشيء معلولا يرى. إن الذي الشيء إليه افتقرا فعلة وَالشَّيْءُ مَعْلُولًا يَرَى or يُرَى. The thing. So you have shay and what this shay needs. Truly, أن the thing that shay, something needs, الیه افتقرا. This افتقرا is not مثنى, is not for two. It's افتقرا because of poem fathe is mad, made mad. So what something needs to have in order to come to existence is called illa, and that thing that needs this illa is called معلول, is seen as معلول. إن الذي الشيء إليه افتقره. Suppose, for example, shay is rain. Rain needs something in order to happen. It's dependent, is needy for something to happen so that we can have rain, like formation of cloud. So cloud is part of the illa for rain. إن الذي الشيء إليه افتقرا فعلة والشيء, like rain, معلولا يرى, is seen as معلول. So if you are asked what is illa, what is معلول, you say in a general sense anything that something needs for its existence and depends on it for its existence is called illa. This is illa بالمعنى الأعم. Interestingly, just now in Ma'arif al-Quran, by Ayatullah Misbah, we were talking about this. فَمِنْهُ نَاقِصٌ وَمِنْهُ مَسْتَقَلْ. That first couplet was definition. Now we are going into classifications. Sometimes that thing that we need, that illa, is naqis, and sometimes it is tam. Illat al-naqisa or illat al-tam, or illat al-naqisa wa illat al-mustaqil. So illat can be divided into two parts. Naqisa, incomplete cause, or tam, complete cause, or you can say mustaqilla, independent cause. Inshallah, we will explain. But for the time being, tamma means everything that you need is there. Everything for the effect is needed is there. It's available. It becomes complete. Illat al-naqisa means it's part of illat al-tamma. Maybe there are other factors also. For example, in order to have a child, we need many things. Parents are needed, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to also have His will and mashiyah and action. So if you have all these things, it's illat al-tam. But if you have just, for example, father or mother, or father and mother, but not the will of Allah, it's not complete, it's not tam or mustaqil. So فَمِنْهُ نَاقِصٌ وَمِنْهُ مَسْتَقَلْ وَمِنْهُ خَارِجٌ وَمِنْهُ مَا دَخَلْ. This is the second classification. Sometimes illa is illat al-dakhiliyya, sometimes illat al-kharijiyya. Illat al-dakhiliyya also is called illat al-muqawwimah. According to Aristotle, we have four types of illa. Illat al-maddiyya, illat al-suriyya, which are dakhiliyya, is inside. Illat al-fa'iliyya, illat al-ghayya, which is outside the mahiyya or the essence of معلول. So, in two couplets, he has given definition of illa and معلول and has given two types of classifications. Illat naqisa or غير مستقلة means it doesn't have everything that we need. For example, if you have paper, no ink, or you have ink, no pen. If you have pen, no writer. If you have writer but no wheel, or his wheel but Allah doesn't want. So there are so many things that we have to have all of them so that something can be written on this piece of paper. If all of them are there, it's علت مستقل or تام. Means it's enough, we don't need anything else. If it is part of it, we call it علت ناقصه. After talking about علت خارجی and علت داخلی, then Hakim Sabzewari goes further to explain that علت داخلی is علت مادی and علت صوری. خارجی, as we said, is فاعلی and غایی. فالعنصری الصوری للقوام. العلة العنصرية and العلة الصورية. عنصري means مادي, material. Because علة مادي is the one from which something is created. Like Allah created human beings from the clay. Created living beings from water. جعلنا من الماء كل شيء حي. A carpenter makes a chair from wood. Al-Unsuri. As-Suri means علة السورية, that form that it has. Wood is given the form of a chair for it. Al-Unsuri السوري للقوام. These are علل مقومة. These are things by which something can, be subsistent. للوجود. But we have علل وجودية, those things that are external and they are giving existence or are part of the process. For example, علت فاعلی is giving the existence. علت غایی is شریک العلت الفاعلیة. What makes fa'il interested and decide doing this action is علت غائية. Why this carpenter makes this chair? He has a غاية, for example, to sit and rest or to sell. That makes fa'il interested. So fa'il needs غاية in order to be finalizing his will to proceed. وللوجود الفاعلی التمام means الوجود are علت فاعلی and tamam, which is referring to علت غایی, because علت الغایی شریک العلت الفاعلیه is the completion of علت فاعلی. Ayatummah Mutahhari says there is a classification from Aristotle up to now that Allah is either fa'ili or gha'i or maddi or suri. And then he says, for example, in human actions, for example, about a person who's writing something on paper with pen and ink, he says, Illat fa'il is this person, Illat gha'i is why he's writing this, Illat maddi is the paper and the ink which are needed, and Illat suri is the way he writes, the style and the shape that he gives to his writing. In all human actions and creatures, these four are there, and therefore Hukama have mentioned this. Now let's see how Hakim Sabzewari explains these four. وَمَا لَأَجْلِهِ الْوُجُودُ حَاصِلُ فغایة وما به ففاعل. We have ما به الوجود and ما لأجله الوجود. ما لأجله الوجود is the purpose. Why you are doing this. This is called غاية, your end. ما به الوجود is fa'il who does this. So ما لأجله الوجود and ما به الوجود. The third thing, illat maddi, which he said as unsuri. He explains it more. حامل قوة لشيء أنصره. حامل قوة لشيء أنصره بوحدة أو ضم ما يغايره. What carries the potentiality for something is its madda, its unsur. So what is علت مادیه, that thing that admits, accepts forms, so has قوة, has potential for them and accepts them. بوحدة, sometimes this alone is able to take the new things. Sometimes other things also have to be added so that it can receive that form. In order to explain illat maddi, he says we have to explain another terminology and then another idea, which is not just terminology, it's idea that philosophers have about isti'dad. So we need to know this so that we can better appreciate illat maddi. In the nature, in the natural world, we have always turning and becoming, transformation. Always. سیرورت, becoming. شدن in Farsi, سیرورت in Arabic. So things keep changing. If you have a wheat seed, for example, and it is planted in a good soil, then it grows and it becomes wheat, and then gives seeds, etc. Or for example, there's an egg becomes, for example, a hen or chicken, etc. So everything has a certain path towards perfection of their own type. We don't expect, for example, a wheat to become a human being, or for example, an egg to become a scientist, for example. But they can move towards their own perfection. So they have potentiality for their future, and that potentiality is with them, and this potentiality may intensify, becomes more and more when we move towards that surah, that form. He says in this world there is a current, there's a jarayan, there's a stream, there's a current of shodan, sayrurat. And we see everything in this physical world is changing. But it's not that everything can become everything. Yeah. So if you have a seed of this flower, it becomes that flower. If you have seed of that another flower, it becomes that flower. Or if you have seed of wheat or barley, dependent on what you have planted, that comes. So at the same time that the world is always becoming and processing, etc., but there are clear defined things. Like when a train reaches a station, maybe there are many tracks for this train, that this train can go to this track or that track, but it's not by chance. There is something in the train that decides where to go. So for us also in this world there are lots of changes, but it's not that everything can become everything. There are rules, there are potentialities. These potentialities can grow. When, for example, for human embryo, alaqe, then mudghe, then for example you have bones, and then you have flesh, etc. So Ayatummah Mutahhari says we should mention the 3 points. One is, in this world we have a current, a stream of shodan, becoming, sayrura, and every moment things keep changing. Of course, not everything can become everything, so they keep changing, but they have their own track. There is a disagreement between earlier philosophers and some contemporary or modern philosophers about what is the basis, what is the criterion for this sayrura. This is very important. one aspect of difference is Muslim philosophers and classic philosophers, they would consider every natural being as one unit. There is a kind of integrity in every natural being. But according to many modern philosophers, they don't see that whole, that integrity. They say everything is combination of pieces and parts also combination of pieces and parts. This makes a huge difference in understanding the way this world functions. So he says, according to early philosophers, the combination of the materials that we have in this world are not happening and are not, developing and going forward except through a kind of guidance coming from inside, a kind of purposefulness which is from inside. Some materialistic scientists who are known as proponent of mechanism, they say, give us matter and motion and we will make the whole world. ماده و حرکت را به ما بدهید جهان را می سازیم. Give us just motion and matter, or some people may say time and madde, and in the good time we can make everything, not knowing that everything is not just material and changes are not just putting this matter next to that matter. Philosophers use also قوة. You have to be careful. قوة that philosophers use many times, especially in discussion about حركة, is opposite to فعل, and قوة means potentiality. This قوة doesn't mean force or power. When we say قوة opposite to فعل, كل موجود إما بالقوة أو بالفعل, this قوة is not power or force in the physics. This قوة means potentiality, being able to admit new forms. And philosophers mean by the disposition for becoming that there is something inside in everything that is moving towards actuality and towards perfection of that particular type. They don't want to become perfect in the sense that another being wants, but everyone is going towards their own perfection. ربنا الذي أعطى كل شيء خلقه ثم هدى. So they are guided towards their own best possible perfection. Again, he repeats that it's not that everything can become everything. The tracks are clear. Although we cannot know how many tracks are there, we don't have that much of knowledge to say this thing can only become two things or three things. But the tracks are there. So from what we said, we can understand this, that every phenomenon, every hadith, every incident must be preceded by potentiality. It must be potential and then becomes actual. They say كل حادث مسبوق بمادة. Every hadith is preceded by madda, and madda is what accepts the form. Then he goes on discussing illat al-Suri. العلة الصورية, formal. Hakim Sabzewari says, وَمَا بِهِ لِلشَّيْءِ فِعْلِيَّتُهُ وَمَا بِهِ لِلشَّيْءِ فِعْلِيَّتُهُ صُورَتُهُ فَمِنْهُ شَيْئِيَّتُهُ. Something by which actuality or fi'liya happens for معلول is its surah. It is surah that helps madde to become actual, because madde cannot exist without surah. Then فَمِنْهُ شَيْئِيَّتُهُ. شَيْئِيَّةُ الْمَعْلُول is because of what? Because of its surah. You may remember in Akhlaq in the Hose of London, in the book Self-Knowledge, I have mentioned something from philosophers, but we have it also in Bidaya and other books, that حقيقة الشيء بفصله الأخير. حقيقة الشيء بفصله. What makes a human being is نفس ناطقه, is not حيوانية or نباتية or جسمية, because this can be found in other things. For example, we are حيوان ناطق, but we have also حيوان ناهق, حيوان ساحل. We have lots of other animals. So what makes me as a human being is exclusive, the very last differential, فصله الأخير, ناطقية. And on top of that, other things that are exclusive to me. But you cannot say what makes a human being is حيوانية, because this is available in horse, in donkey, in monkey, in elephant. Or what makes a human being is that it has vegetative life. This is available in animals and plants. Fasl is the main thing, the fasluhul akhir, the last differential. And you know, fasl is the same as illat al-Suri. Jins is very similar to illat al-Maddi. It's just one of them is bishart la, Maddi and Surah or bishart la, but jins of fast are la bishart. They can be predicated of each other. So, madde is the one that carries potentiality, and istidad, which is more specific than potentiality. Istidad is specific, istidad is existential, istidad can be intensified. Always very general. He says, we said, for example, egg carries the potential or istidad for becoming a, for example, baby chicken. So a baby chicken is potentially existing in egg. So we can understand few things. There is always a link, a connection between past and future. Future is not disconnected, separated from past. And natural phenomenon in this world, they are continuous. In the same way that past and future are not disconnected, natural phenomena in this world also are not disconnected. They have changed, but there is continuity kept in them. Number two, it's not that every past has equal relation with every future. The tracks are there. If you have this history, this future waits for you. Number three, the connection is connection between potentiality and actuality. Every past is potential or carries the potentiality for a future, and every future is the actuality of the past. There was something بالقوة in the past that little by little makes the future. Number 4, because the connection between the past and future is the connection between potentiality and actuality, so they are not easy, they are not very simple for understanding. So past and future all together make one unit, and future is present in the past, not two separate. We said past and future are not disconnected. Let me read for you this passage. It's one of the most important passages in this lesson. پیوند گذشته و آینده چون از نوع پیوند قوه و فعل است، پس یک ارتباط ساده نیست. The link between past and future, because it is a kind of link between potentiality and actuality, is not a simple connection. بلکه گذشته و آینده مجموعاً یک واحد واقعیت را تشکیل میدهند. History and future together make one unit. There is continuity. We are not talking about dots. You know, sometimes you put disconnected dots, sometimes there is a line. We are talking about the line. He says, this is why, as some recent contemporary philosophers, or at least recent Muslim philosophers have understood, the changes that happen from potentiality to actuality is with وحدت اتصالی. It's a kind of unity by the sake of continuity, because it's tadriji. It's a gradual process of changing. Imagine, for example, if you have an apple. First, this apple is very green. Then little by little, green becomes lighter, and then, for example, becomes yellow. When it's ripe, it is very yellow. Or it becomes red. This is al-khuruj al-tadriji min al-quwwati ila al-fi'l, and this is harak. And we mean by tadriji to be connected and gradual. For us, tadriji doesn't mean slow. It can be slow, it can be fast, because some people thought tadriji means slow. No, tadriji is opposite to daf'i. Ayatummah Mutahhari says tadriji is opposite. Because you remember in the discussion about haraka, we had this in philosophy, bidaya, etc., that كون فساد is خروج دفعي من القوة إلى الفعل. Like hitting something, arriving somewhere, happens at once. Someone dies. Process can be taking time, but at one point this person dies. It's not that saying in 5 minutes. No, because up to a certain moment he is there, and then he has departed. It happens at once. Like hitting a wall happens at once. So we are talking about tadrij opposite to daf'i. Daf'i means at once, tadrij means gradual. We are not talking about slow or fast. So he says, پس جواهر و اعراض عالم, substances and accidents in this world, عموماً چون تغییر میپذیرند, because they are, generally changing and going from قوة to fail, from potentiality to actuality, and this is through gradual process of حركة. Therefore, there is a وحدت اتصالی, there is a unity by the sake of connection. This continuity is very important. Like when the river is always with water, there's a kind of unity. If a river stops, there's no water, and after some time water comes, that continuity is missed. So now we have to study and explain three more things. One, why they call material and formal causes internal causes. In other words, why they call al-illatul maddiya wal-illatul suriya, they call them illatan dakhiliyatan. Why they call them internal causes. And why they call illat fa'ili wa illat gha'i external causes. This is one point. Number two, what is the relation between two internal causes, between madda and surah, and two external causes, between ghaya and fa'il? Number three, what is the relation between these two and those two? Please pay attention to the difference between second question and third question. In the second question, we ask, we have two illat dakhili, illat maddi, illat suri. What's the relation between them? We have two, so I put like, one thing. Here we have two things, illat fa'il, illat gha'i. So in second question, we ask, what's the relation between these two, and what is the relation between these two? But now in the third is, what is the relation between these two? Between ilal khariji and ilal dakhili, external causes and internal causes. We give answer to the first question and we discuss the rest, inshallah, in the session tomorrow. So the first question was, why we call illat maddi and illat suri illat dakhili, internal cause, or call illat fa'ili and gha'i external? The answer is, we consider معلول and we say what type of relation each of these four has with معلول. For example, there is a writing on a piece of paper. This writing is معلول. A text is معلول, is effect. We have paper and ink. Paper and ink are very much inside the text, because madde that accepted this handwriting, this style of writing. Also, the style of writing is also part of the text. Yeah, because otherwise it was not a text, unless you give it a way of writing. Or for example, if you have a chair, this chair is from wood, so wood is part of the chair, and the design is also, the form is also part of the chair, and these are internal. But illat fa'ili is outside. Illat fa'ili is not part of the chair. It's part of the illa, not part of the effect, part of معلول. Illat fa'ili is outside, or for like the carpenter or the writer is outside the text, and therefore even in some cases it may not be there anymore. If it is illat mufide, it must be there, but if it is mu'ed, it can go away. We can have the text after the writer dies or disappears. Illat gha'i is also outside, because why this has been created. So it's not difficult to understand why they call illat maddi and illat suri illat dakhiliye or muqawwime because it constitutes that, and illat fa'ili and illat gha'i, they call them kharijiye. Inshallah, tomorrow we carry on with the rest of this a lesson on illah. It's a long lesson. And then maybe inshallah tomorrow also we start the next inshallah also lesson, and that is about ghaya. As I said, Ayatummah Mutahhari says after finishing classifications and definitions, we want to talk more about ghaya, which is one of the issues that we have disagreement between divine philosophers, al-Hukama al-Ilahiyun, and some contemporary or modern materialistic philosophers. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.